Here we go. All right, welcome, Baruchim Haba-Im, everyone. Baruchim Haba-Im to the Parsha Shiur on Parshas Vayechi. Parshas Vayechi, the Shiur tonight, is dedicated to Zecher Nishmas Yisrael Michal ben Moshe Elia, whose yahrzeit actually is tonight. And of course, I'm going to just mention that my Choshev Talmud, Menachem Mordechai ben Ophira, should have a refuah shalema. Everyone is invited to join with any of the online shiurim that we have. If you go to YIBE.org, you'll see a number of shiurim that are available online. And if you want to join the Zoom meeting that is in the Daf Yomi, that's also available at 7 o'clock in the morning. All right, today's Parsha, of course, is Parshas Vayechi, and we're going to go to a screen share right away in order to begin with a very interesting point, and that is that the Gemara says that Yaakov Chazak v'nis chazek. We have a rule that at the end of the do you all see the screen? Right? Can you see it?
I'm 65.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. We are now this Gemara that I'm showing you now is in Masechta Taanis on Daf Hey Yomid Beis. Is this Masechta Taanis? No, Brachos. Masechta Brachos Daf Lamed Beis Yomid Beis. Excuse me, on Daf Lamed Beis Yomid Beis, and I wanted to learn the following with you. As you know, Parshas Vayechi is the last sedra in Chumash Bereshis, and at the end of reading Parshas Vayechi, we say the words Chazak, Chazak, v'nis chazek, which means be strong, and be ever stronger. Here is the Gemara on Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, in Masechta Brachos. Follow the hand. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis learn, Arba tzrich and chizuk. There are four things that need chizuk, four things that need constant strengthening. We'll discuss them in a moment. The Eluhain. These are the four things. 1, Torah needs strengthening. 2, Maasim Tovim needs strengthening. 3, Tefillah needs strengthening. And 4, Derech Eretz needs strengthening. And we have to understand that Derech Eretz doesn't mean respect over here, but as Rashi points out to us over here, when it talks about Derech Eretz, look what it says. I'm going to read the Rashi with you. Here it is. Derech Eretz. Im umanhu. If you are a craftsman, then naso. When you do your craft, you're going to have to constantly strengthen yourself. Im socher hu. If you're a business person, l'schuraso. You're going to have to strengthen in your business. And im ish milchamahu, and if you're a man of war, lemilchamto. So we see that derech eretz means the normal way of life in various different professions. Whatever it is, it needs chizuk. So those are the four things. Let's review them again. We see number 1, Torah needs chizuk. Ma'asim tovim, good deeds need chizuk. Tefillah, prayer needs chizuk, and derech eretz, being involved in the world and in business and making a living, needs chizuk. And now I'm just going to learn the few sentences that the Gemara in Brachos tells us. How do we know this? The Gemara says, Torah umasim tovim minayin. From where do we know that Torah and good deeds need chizuk? Shenemar, because the pasuk says, and the pasuk is in, of course, Yeshua. It's also mentioned similarly at the end of Chumash Devarim, but not exactly the same way. Rak chazak ve'amatz ma'od, but only you should be very strong and fortified, lishmar velasos, to guard and to do, kechol aTorah, like all the Torah. Now, we have here chazak ve'amatz, and the Gemara explains, chazak means baTorah. Ve'ematz, be fortified, b'ma'asim tovim. So yeah, the Gemara brings psukim to prove its thesis. It doesn't just say it like they say in Yiddish in the Welt Ein. It's not just being mentioned something strange. It's telling us something that has scriptural backup. And now it comes to Tefillah Minayim. From where do we know that prayer requires chizuk? Shen Nemar. He quotes famous pasuk at the end of Tehillim Chaf Zayin, which we say the David Hashem Ori. Kavei El Hashem, have faith or have hope in Hashem. Chazak v'yametz libecha, be strong and fortify your heart. The Kavei El Hashem. So notice, it starts out with Kavei El Hashem, and then it says Chazak v'yametz libecha, the Kavei El Hashem. After you had hope in Hashem and you daven, you go back and you daven again with even stronger Chazak v'yametz libecha v'Kavei El Hashem. And derech eretz minayin. How do we know that the way of the world literally needs strengthening? Shenemar, because the pasuk says Chazak v'nischazek ba'ad amenu. The famous pasuk in Shmuel Beis. Over here, I don't have time to go through the entire episode, but David HaMelech appoints Yoav, the general, to go to war against the various armies that are gathered against him. There's Ammon and other nations all joined together to squash the Jewish people in the middle. And Yoav says the words Chazak v'nischazek ba'ad amenu. Be strong and let's be fortified for the sake of our nation. And they go to war outnumbered by tremendous odds. And of course, with the help of Hashem, they win the war. So we just learned that. I forgot to turn. See what happens? I forgot to turn my phone off. I'm going to turn my phone off right now. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that. Can you do that right now? So Yoav tells Chazak, v'nischazek ba'ad amenu. There are a number of interesting interpretations of why just these four need chizuk. Let's review them over here. The four things that need chizuk is Torah. Why does Torah need chizuk? Torah means when we study Torah. Look, we just finished this Shabbos. We're going to finish Chumash Bereshis. We're going to finish reading Vayechi. Even if we took it very seriously, the entire Chumash Bereshis, even if we follow the halacha that's brought down in Reish Pei Hey, that we did Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, even if we learned the Psukim twice, the Targum once, the Rashi, the English translation, even if we went through it, even if we went through all of Rashi and all of Targum, even if we went through all the Ramban, and even if we went through the Orach Chaim and the Klei Yoker and the Makros Gedolos, the Bala Turim, even if we learned all those things, could we confidently say, I know Chumash Bereshis? Or is there more to be learned, even greater things to be learned? And this is only Chumash Bereshis. So the Torah says, don't despair. Let's say you only know simple translation. Let's say you didn't even study every Rashi. Maybe you didn't understand every Rashi. So what do? You're going to say, I forget it, I'll never get it? No, you have to be mechazek yourself. Chazak v'nischazek. If you learned one pasuk, be mischazik yourself so that the next time we learn Vayechi, you'll learn another pasuk. One step at a time. Don't give up. It needs chizuk. Because a person could despair and say, I'm not a Talmud Chacham, I'm never going to learn. It's not so. Everyone is given the exact amount of understanding and knowledge that they need by Hashem, and then they have to just work at increasing the potential that they have and expanding on what they know. So Torah needs chizuk. Let's go to Ma'asim Tovim. Ma'asim Tovim needs chizuk. Look, we all do the best we can to do good deeds, to help other people, to help our family, to love our family, to share with our family all our knowledge, all our caring. We do the best we can, but sometimes, even though we help other people, even though we think that we're doing Ma'asim Tovim to the best of our ability, it does happen that we fall short. Not only that, but there are times where we do something what we consider to be good. We care about someone and show it to them, and they throw it back at us as if we don't. Or they'll accuse us of not caring when really we deeply do care. Or they'll even reject what you offer them, and they'll say, I don't want your help. Don't bother me. And you'll get discouraged. Therefore, Maasim Tovim needs chizuk. Sometimes we do so many things for another person, and then that other person, when it comes, you ask for a little favor. Could you do me a favor and help me out with this? Oh, I don't have time for you. So we get discouraged. Along comes the Gemara and says, Maasim Tovim, you need chizuk. Don't get despondent. If someone rejects your Maasim Tovim, that's their problem. But you have to do whatever you can to continue to fulfill the concept of doing Maasim Tovim. So it needs chizuk. Next, tefillah, davening. We all have had the experience where we talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we ask him for something. We also say things in tefillah that are very meaningful for us. Even just the first 3 words of Shemona Esrei are unbelievably pregnant with meaning. We say, not blessed is God. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, Baruch Atah Hashem. Blessed are you, God. We're having a one-on-one direct conversation with God. Blessed Baruch Atah Hashem. Blessed are you, God. And we pour out our heart's desires and ask for things, thinking that, well, I davened, therefore I will get what I want. No, it doesn't work that way. Hashem is not a puppet that you daven and you press a button and the puppet pulls the strings and does what you want. Sometimes, yes. Many times, yes. We remember when we daven, we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Shomeya Tefillah. Blessed are you, Hashem, who hears our prayer. Doesn't say, blessed are you, Hashem, who does what I want when I pray. But that doesn't mean we should give up, no matter what. Tefillah needs chizuk. Tefillah, we have to strengthen ourselves. Not only is it in terms of getting what we want, but in another way. Do we fully understand what we're saying when we're davening? Do we delve into the import of the words, the beauty, the lofty ideas that are being expressed? Rav Moshe Feinstein Zal used to say that one of the most important parts of the Shemona Esrei are the modim, because at the end of modim we say, "Va'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu," with the miracles that you have always with us, constantly. Hatov ki lo cholu rachamecha. You never end with your mercy. V'amarachem ki lo samu chasadecha. And never do your kindnesses end. Ki me olam kivinu lach. Because all the time, it's al chayenu amasurim biyadecha, on our lives that are given over to your hand. V'al nishmosenu apakudos lach. And to our souls that are entrusted with you. V'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu. And so on. That needs chizuk. You have to constantly think about the meaning of the words, the translation of the words, the understanding of the words, and that's why tefillah needs chizuk. And finally, derech eretz. As Rashi said, whether it's business or craftsmanship, whatever it is we do, very often we can easily get discouraged. A person can open a business, put all his savings into the business, and it's a bust. They lost everything. And that they can give up on life. But they don't. A successful businessman, if you ask them, they will tell you, I tried this, it didn't work. I went back and tried another one. I went into business again. I did it again. I worked again. Every time I read one of these success stories that are printed up in the magazines about successful business people, I'm aware of the fact that all of them say, I didn't succeed the first time. I made many mistakes along the way, but they didn't give up. And so we say, chazak, chazak, minis chazek on derech eretz. Whether you're an artist or you're a craftsman or you're a worker, or you're a business person, or you're a soldier, or you're a soldier in Hashem's army, it needs chizuk, and we do not give up. And so the introduction to Parsha Vayechi centers around the concept of chazak, chazak v'nis chasek, and these are the four things that need chizuk, and we need to fortify ourselves in these areas, because when we fortify ourselves with these things, we're capable of achieving great things in our lives, because we just don't give up. Okay, we're now going to go to the next year. We'll stop this one and get to the next one. We'll be right back. Here we go. Okay, and now we're going to bring up a new share, and we're going to go to the psukim in the beginning of Vayechi. If we can draw them up right away, it should be here now. So let's see if that's it. No, I don't think that's it. No, that's not it. We'll try to get it in the other one. 1 minute, we'll be right there. Go to the violence. That's not together. That's what. That's the kind of is. Okay. We're going to go. Stop share 1 second. We'll stop this share, and we're going to go back to the next topic, which is also a Gemara, a different Gemara. Let's see if it's the same one. I think it's the other one. Yeah. Okay. Here is the other one. Now. No, this is the same. This is the same one. Yep. My mistake. I'm sorry. We have to go back. We have to go back and get the other one. I thought I had it right there, but it's obviously not right here. Okay, let me draw this up. And get the other one. 1 second, we'll be right back. You know what? I'm not going to have the share on this one. I'm just going to speak about this particular one because I think the share disappeared somewhere along the line. There is a statement here at the beginning of the Parsha, which is a statement centered around the psukim of Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, that Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim. 1 second, try to get it right now. Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim, and he lived there for 17 years, total of 17 years. Okay, now we're going to get it. 1 second, here we go. So when it says that he lived there for 17 years, it says he lived there for 17 years, the pasuk goes on to tell us what happened, and here it is. Here's the share. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim sh'asrei shana, right? So he lived there for 17 years. Vayehi yimei Yaakov shnei chayav sheva shanim v'arba'im u'ma'as shana. He lived a total of 147 years. 147 years. And then he died. At the end of Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov dies, and he's buried by his children back in the land of Canaan. The Gemara in Masechta Tainus on Daf Hey Amid Beis makes the following statement: Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Yaakov, our father, did not die. Can you imagine that? The Gemara makes that statement. Yaakov Avinu lo meis. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? How can you say Yaakov Avinu lo meis? What, they embalmed him for nothing? And they buried him for nothing? And the whole procession at the end of Vayechi, when all the nobles of Egypt went with the 12 tribes going back to Canaan, it was the greatest funeral in the history of the world. Every king in the world was at that funeral of Yaakov Avinu, and they buried him. Could you say, and then they hesped him and they mourned over him? Can you say he didn't die? How's it possible? So the Gemara answers and says, no. When it said Yaakov Avinu lo meis, our father Yaakov did not die, it meant the following: his children were alive, afu b'chayim. Just like Yaakov's children were alive, so was he alive, because his children were Bnei Yisrael. And just as the Bnei Yisrael continued to exist, so Yaakov continues to exist. They didn't mean he didn't physically die. They just meant that his continuation, his everlasting memory, is what goes on forever. You know, when we talk about memory, many times we forget what memory is. Memory is forever. You know, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, when I would teach in the yeshiva and I would teach that the neshama is forever, it was very hard to give a paradigm of how the soul is forever. We knew it, we feel it, but we didn't have a paradigm. And then came computers, and an interesting thing happened. You can have a computer stuffed with memory, and you take the chip out of the computer. You pull the plug on the computer. The computer is dead, but the memory is there. And each and every one of us are nothing but memory. Our memory is our lives, and our memory is forever, just like the memory on the chip, unless you smash it, is forever. So, and even then it doesn't always go away. So too, if you're not deleted, your memory is forever. So there happens to be a number of explanations of the concept of Tchias HaMesim and living forever. The concept of Tchias HaMesim can be clarified to exist in a number of ways. One way is every morning, when we get up in the morning, we say, Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmasi b'chemla. You returned my soul to me with mercy. Rabba emunasecha, your faithfulness is great. Every time we wake up, we were totally incapacitated when we slept. We didn't have any control over anything. And then we awaken and we feel restored. It's like, not exactly, but it's like a Tchias HaMesim. That's one form of Tchias HaMesim. The other form, we already learned, Mahu b'chayim, Mazaro b'chayim, just like Yaakov's children are alive, Afu b'chayim. So is Yaakov alive. So is he alive, because his children and him are compared to each other, and therefore, that's another form of Tchias HaMesim. The names that we give our children are names of people who lived in the past. It's almost as if the name that we give them is a recognition of the continuance of that particular individual. Who are we named after? We're named after Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, Leah, Imenu, Rachel Imenu, Dvorah Hanaviyah, Sarah Imenu, Rivka Imenu. We're named after all the great ones in the Tanakh, and the children that came after them and had other names which were based on those names. A name like Ricky probably was Rivka, and we have examples of in Yiddish they called Shlomo HaMelech Shlomo Zalman, which meant pillar, because Shlomo HaMelech built the pillars. All these names are symptomatic of people who were alive, and we have their neshama in our memory, and that's another form of Tchias HaMesim. And another form of Tchias HaMesim is when someone was completely away from any value system that mimicked the Torah value system. And as the Gemara says, V'sha'im b'chayehem kriyim mesim, the wicked people in their lives are called dead, while tzaddikim b'misasam nikram chayim, the tzaddikim, even when they're dead, are called alive. That is another form of Tchias HaMesim. Here is someone who didn't observe the commandments. They made mistakes along the way. They were misled by the lies that come from all different parts of life, whether it's secularists or other religions or people who try to deny the obvious existence of the Boro Olam, and for the tradition that the Jewish people have of year after year, thousands, hundreds, millions of Jews passing it on, direct line descendancy, all the way back to Sinai. When these people who went away from those traditions come back ultimately to the Torah, which we hope and pray they all do, it's like a Tchias HaMesim. It's like a person coming back to life. I've regained a sense of life. Talk to some of the great Balei Tshuva who felt, till now I wasn't living, I was reacting, I wasn't thinking. But when you get to this point, there's so much love and feeling and happiness that comes along with doing the right thing, performing the commandments, and being part of Am and Klal Yisrael, that's a Tchias HaMesim. It's someone who comes back to life. And then, of course, there's the obvious scientific one, which is that we replenish the cells in our body on a regular basis, daily, monthly, yearly. We replenish them many, many times. And that's also a Tchias HaMesim. So there are many forms of Tchias HaMesim, and it says, Yaakov Avinu lo meis, that Yaakov, our father, did not die. Ma zaro b'chayim, just as his children are alive, af hu b'chayim. We're now going to go to another interesting part of this week's Sedger. And in order to get out of this, in order to get to this particular part of the Sedger, we're going to bring up another share. It's going to be a little different, but here we come. Okay, and it's now going to come up in a moment. Just a little bit patient. There it comes. We're going to go to the screen share. It should be right there now. Oops. Here it comes, right here. All right. I'm quoting here a pasuk from Vayechi. It's right before Shlishi. It's a very famous pasuk. I'm sure you can recognize the beginning of the pasuk, which begins with the words Hamalach Hagoel Osimi Korah, right? The Malach that redeemed me from all evil. Yaakov is blessing Ephraim and Menashe. And he says, Hu Yivarech Es HaNe'orim, he should bless the children, V'yikarei Lehem Shmi B'Shem Avosai, and call in them my name and the names of my fathers. Yaakov is saying this, and we did this, by the way. This is a prophecy that came true. Yaakov said they should call their children after me and Avram and Yitzchak. And sure enough, we did that. We just discussed how the giving of the names is a keeping alive of the memory of the person. V'Shem Avosai Avram and Yitzchak. And now come the four words I'd like to focus on. V'yidgu Larov B'kerev ha'aretz. Now let's translate that to the best of our ability. We'll leave the word v'yidgu for a moment. Larov means for multitude, for many. What's B'kerev? B'kerev means in the midst. Ha'aretz. What's v'yidgu? What's the root of the word v'yidgu? Take a look at it. You know, there is not one place in all of Tanakh that the word v'yidgu does not have as its etymological derivation the word dog, which means fish. So the blessing that Yaakov is giving to Ephraim and Menashe and all the Jewish people is v'yidgu larov. They should be like fish, multitudes, but not in the water. The kerev ha'aretz, in the midst of the earth. And if you'll take a look with me, please, at the Targum Onkelos. Look at the Targum Onkelos. Let's read what he says. Uchenune yama, like the fish in the sea, yisgun, they shall spread out, begoy b'nei enosha, amongst the people on earth, al-ara, on earth. They should spread out amongst all the people on earth, just like the fish spread out in the sea. Rav Shamshi Raphael Hirsch makes a wonderful, beautiful observation over here. And he says the following. In the sea, we can't see, play on words over here, we can't see what's going on in the sea. Fishing is one of those very primitive things to do. It sort of puts you in touch with God's special bracha to Adam and Chava, that the Yirdu b'dgas hayom, they will have dominion over the fish in the sea. How do we have dominion over the fish in the sea? We can't get into the sea, but Hashem gave us the knowledge, the ability to have the knowledge to go fishing and pull them out of the sea. But we don't know what's going on underneath those waters. We really can't see, again, that word, we really can't see what's going on in the oceans. With oceanography, perhaps we've gotten more of a handle on the hundreds of thousands of species of fish, but at the same time, we really don't know how they manage to exist. Says Rav Shamshon Farrell Hirsch, the Jewish people are just like that. You cannot fathom, there's a word that belongs to the sea, you cannot fathom how the Jewish people exist, because the Yidgu Larov, they spread out in a multitude, B'kerev ha'aretz, in the midst of the earth, and you wonder, how do these Jews over all the centuries manage to consistently rise up from the worst of tragedies, not just tragedies, but from the worst of humanities, all the nations of the world who threw everything they had at us and continue to do that, only for the purpose of wiping out the only people on earth that have a tradition of godliness, of teaching the world a decency, of teaching the world a derech that is ways are ways of pleasantness. Even the punishments that come in the Torah are given with pleasantness, because the purpose is to draw us into being better human beings at every level. You know, when someone gets saras, that's the prime example, that's the great paradigm. When someone gets saras, you look at the psukim in Vayikra and Sazria and Metzora, you'll see first there's clothing that gets, there's buildings that get saras, clothing that gets saras, you know, and finally the person gets saras. Brings gradually, giving you an opportunity to reflect upon what's happening and see if you can't straighten out the difficulties that are causing this spiritual malaise, this spiritual plague that brings those things. So Hashem has tremendous mercy. In fact, even when the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash took place, we were just learning in the Masechta Tainus the other day, we were learning, you know, it's a very strange thing. The majority of the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the afternoon of the 9th into the 10th. It was set on fire on the 9th by noon, and it burned through the 10th. And the Gemara asks, well, how come we don't fast on the 10th? If that's the case, that the majority burned and it finally fell from the burning on the 10th, why do we fast on the 9th and not on the 10th? And in fact, there's another question. You know, on the 9th, so at the beginning of the Tisha B'Av at the 9th, we're sitting low on the ground, like a mourner. By noon, you're getting off the low chair, and you're no longer in the depths of the deepest Shiva mourning. Why should that happen? If the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the afternoon, that shouldn't take place then. We should be sitting deeper and fasting even more, but we don't. And our Chazal explain as follows. You know why? Because all the time up until the 9th, and even the night of the 9th, and even in the morning of the 9th, Klal Yisrael was afraid that they were going to be destroyed. Hashem was so upset with the misbehavior of the Jewish people that we were afraid we would be destroyed. But then the torch was set to the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash began to burn to the ground. And the Jewish people realized that Hashem in his mercy was not going to kill out the Jewish people. He was going to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And that's why our Chazal say that Hashem took his anger out against the Eitzim and the Avanim, but left the neshamas of the Jewish people to continue on. And therefore, the Yidgul Arod B'Kerev Haaretz, we don't understand the midst of the earth. No one can understand how, through these difficult thousands of years in exile, we managed to maintain our integrity. Tefillin was put on for the last 3,330 odd years. Every Jew who had a four-cornered garment put on tzitzis. Every home that had a doorpost put on a mezuzah. Every Jew woke up in the morning and said, Shema, Modeh Ani. Every time we ate from the time of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah on, we said before brachas, and even before that, we all said after brachas. Avraham Avinu himself said Birchas Hamazon, and Moshe was misaken. He was the one who wrote the first bracha of Birchas Hamazon, and consequently, the continuation of the Jews is an enigma to anyone who doesn't realize what is going on. B'kerev ha'aretz, just like in the midst of the sea, you can't understand the fish. So b'kerev ha'aretz, you can't understand the Jewish people without getting into the Torah itself. All right, we're gonna do a little bit more. We're gonna go now to another. Try to see if I can draw this down a bit and go to another. Let's see. Go down and we'll come back in a moment with another very important thing to show. Okay, and here it comes. In just a moment, go back to store up here. Let's go through. There we go. And now we're going to go to the share. We should have it in a moment. There it is. And we're going to go to the new share and see this very interesting little piece over here. You all can see this. All right. I want to discuss with you a very interesting Chassam Sofer. Every one of us is aware of the fact that this pasuk is the pasuk in which Yaakov blesses Ephraim and Menashe. He puts his hands on their heads, of course, with the famous switching of the hands instead of Ephraim and Menashe, switched his hands. And he says as follows, Becha, in you, Yivarech Yisrael Lemor. In you shall all the Jewish people bless. That's the pasuk. I'm going to show you a Chassam Sofer. Here is the Chassam Sofer over here, but I want to show you the pasuk. Becha Yivarech Yisrael Lemor. In you, the Jewish people will bless their children, saying, Yesimcha Elokim, Hashem should make you Ephraim v'Menashe, like Ephraim and Menashe. Now, there are many discussions amongst the poskim and those who follow them in Hagim about this pasuk. It's a common practice amongst many Jewish families, many Torah families, that on Friday night, the father blesses the children. When he blesses the males, he says this pasuk. It's a prophecy that came true. Yaakov, more than 3,500 years ago, said, B'cha Yivarech Yisrael Lemor. In you, the Jewish people will bless their children, saying, Yesimcha Elokim ke'Ephraim v'Menashe. Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. This prophecy came true. To this day, 3,500 years later, we are blessing our children with these words. Of course, there are many who have a minhag that when they're blessing their daughters, they'll switch the words a little bit, and they'll say Yisimcha Elokim Kisora Rifta Rochel V'Leah. It's interesting to note that according to many poskim, you shouldn't say that, even to girls. Say this, even to girls. Say Yisimcha Elokim Ephraim v'Menashe. Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. Why? Why? So there are two things I'm going to bring tonight. One is one that's not here, the Oznayim LaTorah, the Lutzker Rav, Zalman Sorotskin, and the other one is the Chassam Sofer. All right? We mentioned the Chassam Sofer, we'll do the Chassam Sofer first. The Chassam Sofer brings down Ephraim and Menashe. I'm going to read it with you very quickly, small amount. The Ephraim and Menashe, Misamolim HaTorah v'Ha'osher. Ephraim and Menashe are symbolic of Torah and wealth, because they did that in Mitzrayim. Menashe was the second in command to Yosef. He was his right-hand man. He took over his father's business, you might say, of being the viceroy of Egypt, and he helped him. Ephraim sat and learned, as the Psukim say, by Yaakov Avinu, once Yaakov came down. So Ephraim and Menashe was symbolic of Torah and Osher. And what the Chassam Sofer is saying, that when a parent blesses his child, he wants his child to have Torah and Osher. Now, Osher wealth can be interpreted in many ways. Of course, Ezehu Oshir, who is a wealthy person, Hasamech B'chelko, if you're satisfied with the lot that Hashem gives you. So it could be that that was also Ephraim. But the Chassam Sofer points out an interesting thing. In the bottom line, Yesh lahaktim ulahachshiv males Ephraim haTorah yoser mimales Menashe ha'ashiris. There's no question that we want our children to be well off, and we want them to be successful in whatever endeavor they go to for the sake of earning a living. But Yaakov blessed them to know what comes first. Why did he switch his hands? Because Ephraim was Torah. And Torah comes first, says the Chassam Sofer, because the Torah precedes the Osher. If you've got the Torah, you're going to have Osher. If you don't have the Torah, the physical wealth you have is not lasting. It's of a very temporal nature. It's here today, gone tomorrow. Even, I've often pointed out the play on words, even if you follow contemporary thinking, isn't it interesting to note that in the etymological derivation of the word contemporary, you have the word temporary? It's very fleeting. It's here today, gone tomorrow. The wheel turns. But Torah, everlasting. The Torah is forever. And consequently, we say, Ephraim first. And only after saying that do we say Menashe too. There's a lot going on in this particular sedger that unfortunately we weren't able completely to cover. But one thing is clear. When it comes to Parsha's Vayechi, the life of Yaakov Avinu is one that should give us chizuk. Yaakov Avinu lo meis, says the Gemara. Yaakov, our father, did not die because Mazaro b'chayim afu b'chayim. The children are alive, he is alive. B'choy yivarech Yisrael lemor, a prophecy that came true and is still true 3,500 years later. Can you imagine? You know anyone who could make a prophecy 3,500 years ago and have it done and practiced by hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in the direct line descendancy of the Jewish people to this day? What a heritage. What a gift. What an unbelievable continuation of the neshama of the Jewish people that is inexorably intertwined with the divinity of Hashem, as the prophets constantly point out that the Jewish people are eternal. And consequently, when we daven in the morning and we say, that Hashem should make pleasant the words of your Torah in our mouths, and we and our children, those that came from us, all of them are studying and knowing your Torah Lishma. And the Chassam Sofer, interestingly enough, Rabbi Moshe Sofer, 200 years ago, they say about the Chassam Sofer that when he said the pasuk of Ha'arevna and the bracha of Birchas HaTorah, he cried bitter tears that ultimately his progeny should follow in his ways, and they did. So Tefillah needs chizuk, Torah needs chizuk, Derech Eretz needs chizuk, and Maasim Tovim need chizuk, as we discussed in the Shiur tonight. So when we say at the end of Parsha's Vayechi this Shabbos, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, Hashem should bless every single one of us with the ability to be strong and fortified, even though things are tough for lots of people. In fact, there's an old Yiddish expression, everybody has something that is of great difficulty for them. There's no one who's immune. But the Jewish people, despite all the tzaras and despite everything that's been thrown at them, they say, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, Kaveh El Hashem, Chazak V'yam Yitzlibecha, V'kaveh El Hashem. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a wonderful good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom V'varach. And once again, I'll just mention that today's Shiur was sponsored with Zecher Nishmas Yisrael Michal Ben Moshe Elia, whose yahrzeit was tonight, and of course my Choshev Talmud, Yeshiva Refuah Shavei Menachem Mordechai Ben Ophira, and the neshama of his grandmother should stand in good stead for the entire mishpacha, for everyone. We should hear only good things. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everyone.
Rebbe, good Shabbos, Rebbe.
Thank you, Rebbe. Have a great Shabbos.
By the way, Chevra, you should all know that I became a great grandfather.
Mazel tov, Boro.
Mazel tov.
Yizke legadla l'tayra l'chupa l'masim tovim. Simchas.
Mazel tov, mazel.
Okay. So,
Rebbe, thank you, Rebbe. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Rebbe, a great shekayach.
My pleasure. Have a good Shabbos. Enjoy. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Shabbos, everyone. Thank you so much. You will. We're going to be ending now, so have a wonderful Shabbos.
Yeah. Let me show you a message. Wait,
You need something, Mordechai?
No. I'll talk about Yoda. Go, no.